All right, welcome in everyone to another deep dive.
Yeah, excited to be back.
Today we're going to be looking at something a
Pretty heavy.
little heavy, yeah.
Yeah.
The dangerous path of dehumanization and how it can lead to
Oh,
atrocities.
yeah.
And we have some fascinating material to help us unpack this.
Yeah.
We've got a historical account that we're calling concentrationcamp.pdf,
Yeah.
and then an analysis that looks at how this phenomenon kind of transcends different situations and contexts.
It's interesting because the analysis piece actually uses some visual comparisons too to really drive home
Oh, really?
the point.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so our mission today is to really break down how this process of dehumanization works. What are the stages?
Yeah.
What are the things that make it tick? And then, what does this all mean for us? How do we interact with other people?
Right. How do we see the world around us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with the core concept here, dehumanization.
Yeah.
What are we actually talking about when we use that word?
So at its essence, dehumanization is like stripping someone of their humanity,
Well,
taking
yeah.
away their individuality, their inherent worth.
Yeah, it's reducing someone to a stereotype or a label.
Exactly. It's like
Right.
erasing all the complexity of a person
Right.
and just seeing them as this one-dimensional thing.
And concentrationcamp.pdf,
Yeah.
it's a disturbing example, but it's a powerful illustration of this.
Oh, absolutely.
The way the Nazis portrayed Jewish people.
Right.
It wasn't just about difference. It was about portraying them as vermin, as parasites.
Yeah, as a threat.
Yeah. And that's just such a chilling image. And
It is.
and it was so effective because it tapped into these primal fears and disgust.
Right. It made people afraid.
Yeah.
And when you're afraid, it's easier to justify treating someone badly.
It's like they're not even human anymore in the eyes of the perpetrator.
Exactly. And that's where the analysis piece, I think, adds a really interesting layer. It talks about how when you have propaganda and a strong ideology working together,
Right.
it can actually change how an entire group of people is seen.
Wow.
Individual people with their own stories and families,
Right.
they get turned into this single menacing other.
So it's almost like a collective delusion almost.
In a way, yeah. And once that happens, then mistreatment becomes so much easier.
Right, because they're not even seen as human anymore.
Exactly. It's no longer about individuals. It's about this dangerous category.
It's really disturbing.
It is. And this is where the analysis gets even more challenging.
Okay.
It draws a parallel to how we treat animals in industrial farming.
Oh, wow.
Which, we don't often think about in this context, but it's
Yeah.
like these are living beings with their own experiences,
Right.
but we reduce them to just units of production.
Just commodities.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like their value as living creatures is totally ignored.
So it's like a form of dehumanization, but
Yeah, or maybe objectification is a better word. But the point is, it's the same kind of process happening.
it's about distancing ourselves from their suffering.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how this distancing seems to be like a key mechanism
Yeah.
in allowing mistreatment to happen.
So whether it's calling someone vermin or just calling them, product,
Right.
it achieves the same goal.
Exactly. It creates that separation that makes it easier to harm them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the power of language and imagery.
Absolutely.
The words we use, the pictures we see.
It all shapes how we see the world.
It really does. It's like we don't even realize how much it's influencing us.
And that brings us to the next stage, isolation.
Yeah.
Dehumanization doesn't usually happen in a vacuum.
Right.
It's followed by this separation, this distancing between the dehumanized group
Right.
and the rest of society.
So not just mentally, but like physically as well.
Exactly. It can be both.
And concentrationcamp.pdfs gives us some pretty stark historical examples.
Oh, yeah.
Ghettos, internment camps,
Yeah.
segregation laws, all these ways of physically separating people.
And the purpose there is really insidious.
Yeah.
It's about preventing the majority of people from seeing the suffering.
Oh, wait.
So empathy is reduced and there's less public outcry.
It's like sweeping it under the rug.
Exactly, out of sight, out of mind.
And the analysis makes this really interesting connection.
Yeah.
It points out that both human groups in these historical atrocities
Right.
and animals in industrial farming are subjected to this kind of isolation.
It's like the same principle being applied in different contexts.
Ghettos and camps for humans, cages, and factory farms for animals.
Right. It's all about hiding them away.
So it's not just about the physical separation, it's about the invisibility.
Exactly. And it makes you think about the psychological impact of that.
Yeah.
both on those who are isolated and those who are shielded from seeing it.
It's like it allows the perpetrators to operate with impunity.
Exactly. There's less accountability, less moral opposition.
And it makes you wonder, are there ways in which certain groups today are experiencing this kind of isolation?
That's a good question.
Maybe not as extreme.
Right.
But are there echoes of these patterns?
It's worth thinking about.
It's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
So after isolation, concentrationcamp.pdf talks about the next stage, which is oppression.
Right.
And this is where we see this systematic denial of rights, forced labor.
Starvation, deprivation, all these terrible things.
Yeah, it's like a whole spectrum of just cruelty.
Designed to break people.
Yeah, to crush their spirit and make them totally dependent.
And it reinforces that narrative that they're less than human.
Right, because they're being treated that way.
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle.
And the analysis points out that this oppression can take different forms.
Right, depending on the context.
For humans in camps, it was forced labor and starvation.
But for animals in factory farms, it's confinement and exploitation.
Right, but the underlying principle is the same.
Yeah, the denial of basic needs and rights.
It's about power and control. And it makes you think, are there groups in our own societies who are experiencing this kind of oppression? Maybe not to the same extreme, but are there systemic inequalities that are functioning in a similar way?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves.
It is. It's about looking at the systems around us.
And seeing who's being left behind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tragically, this progression that's outlined in concentrationcamp.pdf, it often doesn't end with oppression.
No.
The next stage is the escalation to violence.
And ultimately, extermination.
Yeah. And the Holocaust is just the most horrific example of this.
Yeah, the scale of it is almost unimaginable.
The mass killings, the torture, it's just...
And concentrationcamp.pdf makes it clear that this level of brutality, it was only possible because of the dehumanization, the isolation, the oppression.
It's like all those things built up to it.
Exactly. It created the conditions for it to happen.
And the analysis makes this chilling observation.
What's that?
That this normalization of violence,
it
can become deeply ingrained.
Yeah, whether it's in extermination camps or industrial farming facilities.
Like a desensitization to suffering.
Exactly. And that desensitization can spread throughout society.
So it becomes acceptable.
Yeah, it becomes the norm.
And what's really unsettling is that the analysis points out that these atrocities, they don't always start with these huge acts of cruelty.
No, they often start small.
Yeah.
Small acts of indifference.
Like turning a blind eye.
Exactly. Or not speaking out against discrimination.
And those small acts, they add up over time.
They erode empathy.
Yeah, and they create an environment where dehumanization can flourish.
And ultimately lead to violence.
It's a slippery slope.
It is.
And the analysis makes a really profound point.
Yeah.
About our shared vulnerabilities.
As living beings.
Yeah, whether we're talking about humans or other sentient creatures.
Right.
We all have basic needs.
And we all have the capacity to suffer.
And recognizing that.
It's essential for fostering empathy.
And preventing harm.
Absolutely.
So this brings us to a more modern example that's discussed in the analysis.
Okay.
The photo opportunity with prisoners in El Salvador.
Oh, right.
And this image is placed alongside those historical images from Buchenwald and a factory farm.
Yeah, it's a powerful juxtaposition.
It is, and the analysis presents this as a modern-day illustration.
Of dehumanization.
Yeah, this ongoing narrative of subjugation.
Right, and the way the analysis interprets this image, it's really thought-provoking.
It is. It suggests that it's a manifestation of this historical pattern.
Of dehumanizing a specific group.
Yeah, and the way the prisoners are presented.
Right.
It reinforces this sense of them being less than human.
Like they're just a mass of bodies.
Exactly.
And it's important to emphasize that this isn't about making a political statement.
Right.
About El Salvador.
Yeah, it's about understanding the mechanisms at play.
Exactly how dehumanization can manifest in different ways.
And how those visual cues and societal attitudes can contribute to it.
Right. It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And recognizing that these processes aren't confined to the past.
Right. They can emerge anywhere.
Even today.
And it's a challenge to us.
To be vigilant.
Yeah, to look at contemporary events and see if we can discern these patterns.
Because if we can recognize them early on,
yeah,
we might be able to prevent them from escalating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as we bring together the key insights from both of these sources,
right,
the message is really clear.
Dehumanization is dangerous.
It's a precursor to atrocities.
And we need to be able to recognize it.
Yeah. Understanding the warning signs and the mechanisms.
It's crucial.
It really is.
And the analysis calls on us to challenge any systems or narratives that perpetuate this idea that any group is less deserving of dignity and respect.
Yeah, it's about championing the inherent worth of all beings.
Human and otherwise.
Exactly.
And it's a fundamental ethical responsibility.
It is.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the analysis reminds us that our vigilance against dehumanization.
Right.
It's not just about preventing these large-scale horrors.
No, it's about protecting our own humanity.
Yeah.
It's about not becoming desensitized to suffering.
And about promoting empathy and understanding.
Absolutely.
The call to action for all of us.
It is.
So as you reflect on all of this, can you identify any subtle ways that dehumanization might be manifesting?
In your own communities or in society as a whole?
It might be in the language we use.
Right.
The stereotypes we perpetuate.
The ways we marginalize or ignore certain groups.
It's often in the small things.
The things we don't always notice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
Given everything we've discussed.
Right.
What responsibility do we have?
To challenge dehumanization.
Yeah. And how might even those seemingly small acts of indifference contribute to larger tragedies?
It's a heavy question.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's one we need to grapple with. So we encourage you to keep thinking about these themes.
And to consider the power of empathy.
And recognizing our shared humanity.
In combating dehumanization.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.